Hey there, this video is to talk about acrylic painting. So if you have acrylic paint at home and you decided you didn't want to work with this colored pencil anymore, you were over it, some of you may have even decided you wanted mom or dad to go out and buy you some just to get away from having to use this anymore. But I'm going to continue on with this using acrylic paint, and I wanted to talk about how to mix in the materials that you need. So if you do not have a paint palette, you can go through your recycling and find a lid. White is better. If you don't have anything in recycling, you can go to your pantry and look and see if you have any Tupperware lids. You can also use, I've used tin foil, and you can actually close the tin foil and keep your paints in there nice for a couple days. And you can use freezer paper. Baking paper and freezer paper work really well too, and they're white and they color mix. I wouldn't use wax paper because it disintegrates underneath the paint and it can tend to lift up on you and get some various problems from that. Okay, so I'm going to pour a little bit of yellow. This paint is going to go very far. I'm putting that much yellow because I'm going to use it to mix the other colors. The other thing you want to do is make sure that you have some nice brushes. And I don't mean professionally nice. I just mean nice in the sense that they're not frayed. So a nice square brush. You can have a round brush if you want, but you want to avoid brushes that look like they're falling apart because you want to try to get those lines nice and clean. I like to use what I call a palette knife to mix my paint, but if you don't have a palette knife, not all of us have those, I also use the end of my brush. Never mix with your bristles because the colors get stuck in there, and as you're painting, all of a sudden a color will come out that you didn't know was in there. And it also takes up all your paint and puts it in the bristle, and it puts it into this area here called the ferrule. And what happens is this brush is really nice right now. It's never had paint up in this area of the ferrule, so you always want to keep your paint about that far away from that area. So if you're painting and you see the paint creeping up, I always go like this. I even take my hands and I squeeze it back out, whatever I gotta do to keep the paint away from that spot, because that's what makes the bristles spread out like a bad hair day. Here's a really good example of a brush that's been ruined. Okay. The other thing that ruins brushes, because you're going to be using water, is storing them in the water. When you store them in the water, they do this at the bottom of the cup, and they have a memory, so it ruins them when you do that too. So something to keep your brushes nice and neat for a long time. I spent a lot of money on my brushes, and the last thing I want to do is ruin them. Oh, that might be too much. All right. So your hue is the color by itself. That's the name or the base color. Your tint is hue plus white. So I'm going to take some white. I always like to leave a little bit of white to the side in case I want to change it. And I'm going to slowly from the side. When I'm mixing color, I never dip it from the middle. I always take it from the side so that you don't contaminate your actual color. And you want it as light as it can be without being white. So pull a little at a time. You can always add a little bit more. Now I don't want this white in my tone, so I'm going to take a paper towel and wipe that off. Try to get as much off of there as I can. All right, make sure there's no white in here. And now you're going to make a tone. So I'm going to take and pull some of this away from my original area. And I'm going to add a tiny, tiny bit of purple just to change it a little bit. So you can see how tiny of an amount that is. And we're going to make a tone. Now you can even make that less of a tone if you want. That purple might have been a little too much. If you mix your color and you don't like what happened, I suggest taking that mixture of the color, taking a little bit of your original color and making another intensity change of that color. All right, instead of adding more and more yellow to this, it's easier to get the yellow and take from that other pile. So shade is hue plus black, and I don't have black here because I don't use black in my paintings. But if you want to do a shade darker, you could actually take your complement and just add even more of it, and it'll do about the same thing. All right, so now you've got your little palette here, your little mini palette. And I told you didn't have to stay for the coloring part of this, and if you did, then you are already gonna probably know what I'm gonna say, but if you didn't, the first thing you wanna do is color this area. All right, so here we had our concentric shapes. So, you know, painting day, first painting day is going to be this one, second painting day is gonna be this area, third painting day is gonna be that area. The hard part is you also have all these triangles in here. So, you can do this one of two ways. You can draw the actual concentric shapes and start planning out some of the triangles like we did together in the first video, and then put all the triangles on the inside, or you could put triangles everywhere. The problem is if you put triangles everywhere, it's hard to tell which of these three concentric shapes you're on. So sometimes you could take a color and go around it to check that off or whatever, but this is by no means done as far as all these triangles. I started this other side, but for this project, for this video I should say, I'm going to try to keep everything as simplified as I can. If you want to do this in watercolor, say you're a fan of watercolor and you have watercolors at home and you got watercolor paper and you've got watercolor brushes, you're going to be doing the same thing. All right, so that is called a tint. It's the lighter area, and you're going to see where I'm pulling from it here. All right. When you're painting with acrylic paint, once you have the tint in your brush, every other color that you grab is going to have that white in the brush. So you're going to want to wash it. All right. I'm not going to wash this though for sake of time. So if you have a couple brushes, that's great. Use one for tints, one for tones, one for shades. If you only have one brush, I would highly recommend you go around and look around your paper and as neatly as you can, outline it, fill it in. Put your bright triangles in a whole bunch of the areas first. It's just easier to do this way so you don't have to keep cleaning your brush. So with colored pencil, you don't have to worry about that. Watercolor, you can't paint next to a wet triangle. So if you just painted a triangle, you gotta skip around and paint other triangles. So that's why the process was a little different for my slideshow, because that one is in watercolor. So that one talks about making all your hues first, and then going back and making all your tints, and then going back and the whole thing. So it's explained a little different. And like I said, the reason for that is that if you put one triangle that is just painted next to another triangle, they're gonna blend together, and you guys learned that when you did the hand drive with the watercolor. So you gotta plan out a little differently if you're making this in watercolor. So I'm skipping around. They can be corner to corner, but that you do not want your bright colors side by side. So right here I have a tone in colored pencil. So I'm gonna skip around, and I would just keep going all the way around until I feel like I have a good number of triangles filled in with some bright colors. Once you're done with all the brights, I wouldn't wet my brush down. I would just wipe it off, and then I would go in and I would put in all the tints that I can find. And here's a tint, so I won't put any tints there. I can use those for tones and shades. All right, so once you've done that, I'll wipe off my brush, there was too much paint on there and I couldn't control it. It was getting messy. So you just continue around and make all the tints you can without making them side by side. Then you're going to take your color mixture and you're going to go ahead and start putting in all your tones. So I can have a tone here. Your tones and shades can be done because all that's in there is the yellow and purple. What you can't do, you can't take your tint because it has white in it and then go to these other ones, okay? Because that one, you don't want the white paint getting into your tone and your shade. So where did I put that? I put that there. So I'm gonna put a shade here. So the painting is fun because it's pretty relaxing. The color pencil can get real tedious. And you can change all these variations any way you want. You just want them to look smooth. And you're just going to continue and paint tints, tones, and shades. All right, so you got your hue, you got your tints, your tones, and your shades. So just like our color wheel, you got your hue, there's tints in the wrong place, tones and shades. Then you're going to go to this outer and you're going to pick the next color. So if your analogous colors are yellow, green, and blue, use yellow, green, and blue. If it's yellow, orange, and red, use yellow, orange, and red. If it's orange, red, and purple, use orange, red, and purple. Whatever 3 colors. All right, analogous colors are 3 to 5 colors next to each other on the color wheel. So whatever colors you choose, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And you're just going to keep painting until the end. So the first paint day, you're to do one color. The second paint day, you're supposed to do another color. And the third paint day, do another color. Please don't forget that all of these have to be full of triangles, just like I had started on the other video. I hope you enjoy.